This podcast represents the opinions of Katie Allen, PA, and guests of her show. The content is for informational purposes only and in no way sets up a patient relationship. Consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Now, here's Katie Allen.
Nice to have you on today. We have Caroline Barnes. She's coming to us. She's a nurse working currently on her family nurse practitioner. And she has been an injector in the Atlanta area primarily for a number of years.
Yeah.
She was working specifically also with Merz, with Radiesse, injecting or teaching other injectors to inject, and is still working to on her own through her own private company, teaching injectors, both beginners and experienced injectors, how to inject.
Yeah.
And then also injects patients currently at Artisan Beaute, which we will have that information listed for folks afterwards so they can find you.
Yeah.
And I know and respect you. And that's why I wanted to have you on so that people can hear the things you say, because not just that you're an awesome injector with a lot of experience, but you're cool. Like you're just a cool cat.
Listen, I do what I can.
And I have a high expectation for
what we can.
So I love talking to you a lot of times about kind of your purpose and what drives you, what motivates you to treat patients. And I want you to just tell us. I was asking you, but I was like, no, I want you to tell us.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is how did we get where we got here? You know what I mean? Yeah. And, when I first went to nursing school, I wanted to be an emergency room nurse. My dad's paramedic and I wanted to do flight nursing.
Yeah.
I want to do emergency medicine, all of that stuff, and kind of just fell into
how. I'm going to say the how because, as this is one thing is you've got so many ladies out there and men that are messaging us, DMing like crazy.
Like, how'd you get into it?
How do we get into it? Yeah.
I mean, so the hilarious thing is, I found my first job off of an Instagram post 10 years ago.
This is why we can't tell anyone how to do it because none of us did.
None of us know how.
Yeah, okay. So 10 years ago, you were just going across Instagram and you found
and I was making $15 an hour.
Okay.
And
you were a nurse already.
Making no money.
Okay.
I was doing part-time ER, part-time aesthetics, and then fell into plastics, which plastics holds my heart. I think you feel the same.
I love it. Yeah.
I love being within the plastic surgery realm because we can do so much.
Yes.
Right.
Agree.
So you really talk about how we got here, 10 years ago, I was ER slinging syringes in the ER and fell into med spa and then fell into plastic surgery. And then 10 years later, here I am, being a clinical educator, working my tushy off, but in a good way, and doing it the right way.
Yeah. Right.
Which I think is really significant. I'm training an injector at work right now. And she asks me, she's like, I feel overwhelmed all of the time. I'm like, you probably feel overwhelmed all the time.
Oh, well, that's why I like what you say, because you tell them that you're telling people the truth. When I have a conversation about you, you're able to say, this is legit how it is. Be confident in it. You're scared. That's normal.
Yeah. And one, you're a provider. Two, this is for-profit medicine. So let's demystify the fact that we're in between, we're hairstylist and clinician meet.
Amen. And we're okay to say that.
Yeah.
And we love both sides of that.
Yeah. I'm going to take really good care of you as a clinician, but we're also, nobody needs any of the things we're offering.
Correct. But you're also going to focus on the medical mindset of keeping it legit, making sure that it makes sense to you.
Well, makes sense and is safe.
Yes. What is your passion in your outreach to patients? What gets you all? I know that was a big, I hear you say always that you like to make sure you're meeting patients where they are.
Yes.
I think
my biggest ethos is meeting patients where they are, because I think this part of medicine, one, is so young.
Yes.
We're in such a young part of medicine, but we're also in a for-profit area of medicine. So when I'm looking at a patient, I want to know, how'd you get here?
Yes.
Tell me your
Who are you?
Yeah. I want to know, who are you? How'd you get here? What have you had before? What have you liked before? If you're new to me, what is your goal. Because at the end of the day, my job is to meet my patients where they are and meet their aesthetic goals. Because everybody has different aesthetic goals, right? Like I'm kind of a like naked mole rat where I never really wear makeup. Hair's always up and like, but I have some patients that
hey, I gotta adjust the ponytail sometimes.
Listen, like I'm literally wearing a braid right now, but like some patients want to be augmented, and if they want to be augmented, and I have that conversation of, okay, this is what that looks like. Is that the aesthetic eye you're going for? My job is to help them get there.
But that is a gift to me, an ability to listen to a patient.
Yeah.
And then hear what they're saying and then be able to provide what it is their goals are.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do that. And do it safely.
And safely. I mean, I think, but also, you know, I think one thing, and I'm sure you've run into this, is sometimes we deal with body dysmorphia.
Yes.
Where we have patients come in and they are perfect.
Yeah.
Or they are chasing something that is not realistic.
Yes. A true filter.
Yes. And so I really pride myself on like, I'm going to be very honest with you and I'm going to be very straightforward with you. And we're going to figure out your goals. And I'm going to tell you if they are realistic or not, what it's going to cost or not, and how long it's going to take us to get there or not.
Amen to all those things.
Just
being real.
Well, I mean, like, that's nice about being in plastic surgery. And I'm sure you feel this way. Like, if somebody needs a facelift, they need a facelift.
Right. So if they come to you in your practice in the way that works on a visit, if you really feel like they need a surgical, which is how it is in mine, then I'm going to say, hey, we can do this with injections, but I really think you need to do this surgical treatment in order to get the best result.
I would much rather tell someone no.
Yes.
And say, hey, you can go see DZA or you can go see one of our awesome surgeons than me take $6,000 of their dollars and then have a subpar result because I wasn't honest with them about what they really need. Now, if they're never going to be a facelift patient, cool.
Yeah.
Like we've got all of the, especially at Artisan, we've got all of the lasers. We've got incredibly talented providers. We've got incredibly talented surgeons. But if they're never going to have surgery, okay, are you cool with a 40 to 60% improvement? And if they're okay with that, let's rock and roll.
Which establishes a relationship that they can control or confidently, to me, respect and believe you. There's a trust that gets established with patients on what you're telling them. Right, which is awesome. That's an awesome thing. And I know they appreciate that with you.
Well, the thing is, we're still clinicians.
Yes.
And I think it's easy to forget that when you're in aesthetic medicine, that like it's still medicine.
Right. What do you see with aesthetic medicine that's been new or changing over the last several years?
Ooh. One, GLP-1s.
Yes.
Which I'm team GLP-1s and 2s. I think when you're doing wellness the right way, it's really powerful. I'm not a wellness provider because I'm not a mid-level yet.
Yeah.
But I've seen wellness done the right way and the wrong way.
Agree. Yeah.
I think at Artisan, we're doing it the right way. Where we're encouraging like nutrition consultation. We're making sure they're still doing weightlifting. Like I don't just want everybody to be skinny for the sake of being skinny.
No. Right.
Like being skinny is cool, but like when you're 50 and you fall and you break your hip and you don't have any muscle left, like who cares if you're skinny?
We need some bone density in there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Specifically like your Caucasian and Asian females, like osteoporosis and osteopenia are really significant. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a lot more of regenerative medicine, less filler, but filler also definitely has a place.
Mm-hmm.
I love Radiesse and Sculptra because they're biostimulators, but if I need a lip or a tear trough, I still need filler. Or if I have somebody that's more instant gratification.
Yes.
Like if I have somebody and they're like, hey, Caroline, I'm getting married in 2 months, or my daughter's getting married, or my son's getting married. I don't have time for biostim to work.
Right.
So I think
Let's say that part. I did want to say the part about biostimulators while we're here for those listening, where they are different because it's the time that you need for those to work. So on the Sculptra and Radiesse being the biostimulators as opposed to the others that are primarily hyaluronic acids.
Yeah. So I think of, and the way I talk to my patients about this is I think of biostimulators like Radiesse and Sculptra as putting something in a crock pot, whereas hyaluronic acid is putting something in the microwave.
That's a good way to say that.
Do you want immediate gratification, or are you okay with the slow burn of treating the disease process of aging?
And it might taste a little better if you wait.
Yeah.
So it might look like, or at least it's supportive of the others.
And we use them both.
Agreed.
You know, I mean, like my biostim, like I'm full of Radiesse. Granted, I'm in my 30s.
Yes.
But my goal is when I talk to a biostim patient, my goal is to help them age slower and make them look like themselves as long as possible.
Amen to that.
Because fillers are just filling space.
Right.
Right? They're not treating anything on a chemical level. They're not treating anything on a cellular level. They're not treating the disease process of aging. They're putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound.
Do you want to say what you're diluting your Radiesse with on a face and your Sculptra on a face?
Yeah. So when I'm doing Radiesse, I'm usually doing, depending on the patient, 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 with saline.
Good.
So 1.5 cc's of Radiesse to either 3 cc's of saline. And this is more for the injectors in the room, but 1.5.
Yeah, but I do want to say that part. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say I have noticed this is something, and I say this because you're really the last trainer that came in to talk to me about Radiesse. I've had a couple of folks with thinner skin.
Mm-hmm.
And in my, I wouldn't say paranoia because I've not seen anything negative at all, but I've thinned it with another cc of saline because the amount of, sometimes there's a little bit of lumpiness laterally, just where it's thinner, a little longer. But that's just me kind of going, okay, this has worked. And then I'm having to come back and do another session. Kind of like what you do
play
with
hybrid at all? Have you added any HAs into it?
No. At the same time, no.
Man.
Tell them.
Okay, so if you do, so let's just say you're like, what are you usually doing?
So I'm doing it at the same time, but I'm not got it in the same syringe.
Same syringe.
Yes. So this is separate. So this is separate what I'm doing on top of it. But I hear what you're saying.
Now I don't do it with Vicross. So I don't do it with any of the V's. And if we need to go into what Vicross is, that's fine.
Okay.
But I love if you either have Bellatero or Redensity in your practice, or just like straight Juvederm, like not Juvederm Ultra Plus, but just straight Juvederm Ultra. Blend that back and forth in your syringe with
how much are you putting? You're putting a cc.
It
you're putting a whole
syringe I'm using.
Yeah.
So my favorite, and this is a beautiful cocktail. So 1.5 of Radiesse to 1 of saline to 1 of Bellatero or 1 of Redensity.
Big.
It's so pretty.
You think it's because you're pulling a little bit more water almost? It's not hydrophilic. Those are not hydrophilic as much, but you're still pulling some because of the hyaluronic acid.
Well, yeah, but you know those biostim patients that have a hard time because it's not immediate.
Yes.
Right? So that's why I say like that crock pot versus that microwave. I think of when I add Bellatero, then I'm kind of more like I'm in an oven or air fryer situation where I get that beautiful slow burn of the biostimulators, but that hyaluronic acid gets them up and over the hump.
Right.
And then you get the best of both worlds.
Plus there's a reflection or something off the skin that I get with the HAs that I don't quite get off of the biostims.
Yeah.
But I need the volume of those to be able to see that reflection if we're acting in that midface. Yeah. All of that.
Now, I don't know that I would do that with PLLA or Sculptra. Just because I don't have enough evidence, but Sculptra and HA at the same time.
There are some doing it, but I just always hold back a little bit on some of those. Just because of the delivery, the amount of fluid that I've got in there on Sculptra. Like if I'm doing 7 and then 2.
So you're doing a 1-to-9.
Yeah. So if I'm doing that and then I think about adding an HA, it's just making sure, is the HA going to spread out, even if you're going back and forth? But the amount of fluid, am I spreading that really on that whole fluid?
I I don't think it's worth it to do it with Sculptra because you have such a high volume of fluid. That's why I like to do it with Radiesse because I don't have that much fluid on board.
Yeah, that's smart to me. That makes more sense to me on the spread.
It's really beautiful.
Yes. And then how do you decide what you're using? And really, this is still for the injectors out there, but how do you decide what you're using, Sculptra versus Radiesse? I say for the patients out there, I'd say when you go into your provider, you let them use whichever one they're comfortable with.
Agreed. Yeah.
I just always say, don't go in there telling the provider what to use.
No.
Yeah.
Because if somebody comes in and they say that what they want to use, I'm like, I'm not the provider for you.
Well, when I first started with Sculptra, I don't know about you, but I started and it wasn't owned by Galderma.
Yeah.
So when we started, it was so much more expensive to the cost of the practice.
Yeah.
So I would use it, but it was, originally for the lipodystrophy with HIV patients and their drugs. And so I was using it, but it was a lot more spread out. And then when Galderma acquired it, it changed the pricing.
Absolutely.
And it was
and made it more
for
doable.
patients. Yes, totally. So go ahead.
So, I think, one, I always try to listen to my patient, right? So if somebody's like diehard Sculptra, diehard Radiesse, I'm going to listen to them.
Yeah.
But my job is to educate them of what their options are.
Yeah.
So if I have a patient that doesn't want any volume and we're just treating skin laxity, like just laxity.
Yeah.
0 volume, I'll pull Sculptra.
Okay.
Usually like I like a 1 to 9. I'm usually like between a 1 to 9 and a 1 to 11.
Yeah.
But if somebody wants volume, like if I have some cachexia through the temples or through that kind of preauricular, pre-jowl space, I like to pull Radiesse just because I can use it in different areas. Like,
so we were talking about temples.
Yes.
At some point here. Definitely we get this area, and not everybody has that volume loss, but some people do.
Yeah.
When you're coming down crow's feet, so there's a point at which on some people, crow's feet, Botox can work for the crow's feet. When I say Botox, Tox in general, Dysport, Dexify, those are
all of them.
Any of them.
Yeah.
So any of the toxins, it can work on some people forever and ever and ever. And then for some people, the toxin is still working on the muscle.
But it's not treating volume loss.
It's not treating the volume loss.
Yeah.
So I know personally how I started addressing it, but how do you address that when somebody's, you've been doing a tox for a period of time and you're just noticing, hey, this just isn't working as well. And I think we have primarily a volume loss. What do you typically use around that area? I think I heard you address it a little bit earlier. But.
So I think there's 2 ways to, like, if it's more of a skin integrity issue, I'll use something like a Radiesse or a Bellaterra or a Restylane Silk just to, like, in the actual line itself.
Okay.
But if it's more of like a volume loss, I'll either do BioStem with Radiesse or Sculptra, or what I'm doing currently, I'm loving Restylane Contour through here, where I use a little cannula and give them some subdermal support.
Okay. And then are you entering laterally and then coming immediately kind of
so
with that
I
cannula?
usually enter, so I come lateral canthal straight out and then straight down. And then I'm usually utilizing a TSK 25 gauge 1.5 inch cannula, fan, and then redirect up, fan. That's my current favorite way.
And then back to when you're treating the crow's feet specifically. So what you're addressing, you're talking about products that are kind of, I call them thinner products, but basically ones that we can use more superficially.
Like a skin booster.
Yes. Are you using them more as like a depot? Are you using it kind of more like across the line? Are you using both?
I'm usually across the line. I think of myself as like a kindergartner coloring in the line. So I'm more like inject, pull out, inject, pull out, inject, pull out.
Yeah. Mine ends up being a little of both because it kind of depends on the line.
Yeah.
Sometimes like, a little deeper, I do a little depot, and then
and like I was working with a patient day before yesterday, and he like consulted with all of these different, he went to surgeons, he went to injectors, and I think what he said is like, he was like, everybody has a different opinion about this stuff.
It's totally true.
It's like, yeah, you're right. Like, we ended up coming up with a treatment plan that he's been super happy with, but it's like everybody has a different way of approaching things. And as long as the patient is safe and happy, who cares?
So I feel like that when you were saying, like even when we get into our 11s in the glabellar area and we get into horizontal lines on the forehead, when you have some folks that they're really too heavy on a brow, they really probably need a brow lift, but maybe we're not going to do the brow lift. You got thicker, lines, and maybe I can even put a little tox in the forehead, but somebody's already low. I'm like,
they
this
need
is
a brow
idea.
lift. If you need a brow lift, you need a brow lift.
You need
I
a
would
brow
rather
lift.
not treat forehead than make them feel heavy.
Because it's the dropping thing, and we're not magical. Like what we all say that are out there and been doing this long enough is that muscle raises up the brow that creates these forehead lines. And if you treat it with Botox, it's going to make you too heavy if you're already too heavy. It's just what the muscle does.
Do you ever do the hand test?
No, tell me.
So like so let's say they're like, I feel heavy, but I want my forehead completely smooth. I put my hand on where I would put their toxin and I'm like, raise your brows. Like, do you feel heavy? Then guess what I'm not doing? Yeah. Your forehead.
And I already feel like that because of my own reputation. I'm like, I'm not making you heavy. I'm not gonna do that.
But that's a good like representation of like, if you paralyze that,
right,
they can't do it.
The other thing is when we're communicating and talking with them is, are they raising their brows in order to compensate? Because once I put the Botox in, if we're talking, and I have the luxury of getting that time to talk with patients, but if they're raising and I keep seeing them raise up the brow, if I knock that out, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
Because that is their compensation. But I do put a little bit superficial sometimes of some of the filler, very carefully, very superficially, in both the 11s and the horizontal lines of the forehead, with the idea of not taking them away, but just helping them not be quite as
skin
deep.
Booster. Yeah. Yes, all day long.
Skin booster, a little bit. So talking about skin boosters, because that seems like a great segue. Are you using Skin Vive at all?
We have it in our practice. I don't use a lot of it, I'll be honest.
You're using other things that sounds like kind of in its place.
Yeah, well, we have Aqua Gold, but we also have a really lovely like Sculptra plus Bellatero plus some Xeomin cocktail that I like better than Skin Vive. I feel like Skin Vive is just an expensive hydrofacial, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. And I've seen a couple cases of vascular occlusion with Skin Vive because people are injecting it too deep.
That's crazy to me. I mean,
I'm just being honest.
No, I know I've heard that because the rep comes by and says, and I'm like, I'm being real. That makes no sense to me. And the reason to explain to those listening,
I want Tyndall effect.
Right. There's no way that should be occurring. So for those listening, it's because Skin Vive or anything that you're referring to, some of the fillers we're using, like a skin booster, is we're injecting them so superficially that the vessels that would be affected by an occlusion, meaning that they get blocked off, the blood flow gets blocked up, should be deeper than that. And yes, they're not horribly deep all the time, but definitely deeper than what's indicated.
Yes.
Which means if you don't get that, you should not be injecting yet.
Bingo.
That's what that means, which goes back to company responsibility for the patients. In my opinion, is companies quit. You're doing it for the masses. Brilliant for the corporate world. Okay. Yep. But when it comes down to patient safety, my gosh, come on, back them up.
Yeah.
That's a little bit bothersome there to me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I think for patients out there, I think there are better ways. Like if my patient has $1,000 to spend, Skin Vive is not going to be the first thing I pull. I would rather get them on some extra. I'd rather get them on some badass skincare.
Yeah. Right.
For that, like if I had to pick one or the other.
Yes. What about for vertical cheek lines? What are you using?
Hyperdilute Radiesse all day long.
Okay, that's what's happening. Okay, you're getting them good.
Yeah,
yeah.
And I'll go through with my cannula and dissect with my cannula first, and then Hyperdilute Radiesse all day long.
Perioral lines.
It depends on the patient. If we're okay with the slow burn, I'll do hybrid. So Radiesse plus Bellatero or Radiesse plus
You're putting Radiesse up above the lip?
I sure am.
Oh.
Hyper dilute though.
How diluted?
1 to 2. So 1.5 of Radiesse to 3 cc's of filling, and they look beautiful.
They don't look like they've been hit.
Nope. I'm only cannula though.
I don't know. Okay.
Like dropping here and fan.
I know. I worry about folks looking too big, but I guess you're going all the way down. Maybe that's.
And
so,
I'm using minutia amounts of
okay.
product.
All right. I can see that. So pretty much you're doing a mix there.
Yeah.
Okay. You have favorites, and I say favorites because patients are always different for lips.
Ooh, yeah. I love
That's a big subject usually.
I love contour for lips.
Okay.
I love velour for lips. I think velour is beautiful. I'm really liking RHA 2.
Okay.
So those are probably my top 3s.
Okay. That sounds good. And then what about and again, we're not held to anything, right? It depends on the patient. What about chin?
Ooh,
and I know anything can change, but it just
So
I don't have any one product I use every time on people.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
we're so blessed that we have every product to use. So in a chin, if somebody's balling on a budget and I have 1 to 2 syringes to use, I'll drop. I think lift is pretty in a chin. My favorite thing is straight Radiesse to the chin here and then dilute here and here.
Yes, and
that's my favorite.
Are you using cannula and bone, or
cannula and needle? Yeah, I'm usually utilizing both.
Combo. Yeah, mine's a combo. Unless it's sometimes in a little touch-up situation where I'm just supporting a little bit, I'll drop on bone and it's fine, or the opposite, just because I'm supporting what we've already done. But usually it's a combo.
Yeah, it's usually combo because I'm not trying to make somebody look like Jay Leno.
Oh, please don't.
And if they need a chin implant, they need a chin implant. But I like to drop a depot here and then fan through there.
Which once again, like you said, sometimes, in fact, I had a patient I treated more recently for a number of years with filler, and she really was kind of in that negative zone with the chin. And we got good results from the filler, but after a while, it's just she needed the chin implant, and it came to a period in her life where she could do that. Oh, it looks great. But that is the beauty of working at a surgical practice. Or I have some friends with some med spas where they refer our direction when that patient needs it. But it's nice to have that.
And for patients out there, that it's important to have that conversation with your injector of hey, is this realistic with filler or Botox or whatever it is?
Yes. Let's talk. Now I'm going to keep moving down that face.
Yeah.
Let's go back. Let's go up just a tiny bit.
Okay, we're circling back.
I know. Let's circle back. Let's go up the face a second. Back up the face. So nose.
Yes.
This is actually, I told you we're talking to the patients, but I was like, this is partially still for the patients and is becoming still for the injectors. Right?
Yeah. So I do non-surgical rhinoplasty.
Yes.
But I only do them ultrasound guided.
Okay.
I have a Clarius ultrasound that I utilize, and I don't utilize it I really only utilize it for very high risk areas and adverse event management. But I will do non-surgical rhinos, and I'm usually either using Restylane Lift or Classic Resty.
Okay. Sounds good.
Because they don't swell.
Yeah. Honestly, let's go back to the budget.
Okay.
Patients, I got you. Caroline's got you.
Yes.
So it depends. If I've already got a syringe open that I've got to use for something else. If somebody wants some mega lips. Okay. So I'm going to pull in some real volume for some lips. I'm going to go towards a Juvederm.
Ultra or Ultra Plus?
Ultra Plus if I really want more structure to it.
Okay, queen.
Yeah.
Okay.
I use
I'm not mad at it.
You know what's funny about that is I actually was just I did a podcast interview with somebody recently, and she was like, I know I'm going to catch heat for saying Ultra Plus, and I was like, not from me.
Dude, I'm not mad at it.
Yes.
I mean, if somebody wants some juicy lips, give them some juicy lips.
Well, and it depends. So if somebody's, it's not even just aging. It's what God gave you, how much sun were you in, whatever.
Yeah.
Am I trying to put more structure there? I don't want flaps. No. So when I'm going to Juvederm, I'm trying to create drama for me.
Okay.
Sometimes I've already produced some structure. Somebody doesn't have lips to start with. A lot of times I'm starting with more of a kiss.
Okay.
or something in there. I'm trying to get a little structure to start with. You're going to come back and see me in a couple of months. This is already
Okay.
discussed. And then I might help you with some
And
trauma
then
and
you're
put some
pulling
treatment in.
vertically.
Yeah. Because I'm pulling up to start with some to try to get that lip out so we can get more pink show.
Yeah.
Which you can do with all the products, really, but
You
certain ones,
can.
yeah. And that's when I start using my BD needles too. But
See, I'm not a back filler.
I do a lot.
I'm not a BD
In
girly.
fact, I'm pretty sure that none of our doctors from my office listen to my podcast, guys. But I
Listen
use
to
so
her.
many,
She knows what she's doing.
I use so many BD needles, but because they dull.
Yeah.
So, I got to use a lot of them because they dull, but I use them so much on lip and so much I don't use my nose. I use regular needle.
Yeah, I use regular
I have
needle.
to do a
I'm
size.
usually using 27 gauge.
Yeah, so I just come straight on. But I'll use Juvederm in the nose, and I don't actually get too much swelling, but more so than I would with Resty. I would use a little Voluma or Lift in the nose, but what that usually has to do with is I'm already using it somewhere else, and I don't need very much. And
you've got 0.2 left.
It's that, and I already knew I wanted to go after the nose. So what I know you have stated, and I know you think similar to me, is I'm trying to make it all work, and I've got to figure out what products sometimes I've got to use in a certain area.
Yes,
and then if I have a little extra, you can
always stick it somewhere.
Yeah. It's that, and the nose might need that. Now, if the nose is the primary area, it changes it.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on? So I don't do post rhinoplasty.
I do.
That makes me nervous.
Yes. So it's funny. I had a trainer come years ago and was kind of saying it, and my boss was actually in the room, and he was saying, "I don't do post rhinoplasty." My boss was kind of like, "Okay, tell me why." Like he's wanting to know why, and the injector, to their defense, doesn't do surgery, and so they're kind of like, "Well, there's all the structure changes." Well, don't tell a surgeon that. Like the structure changes how? Like what? Because truthfully, once you've done a rhinoplasty, you're at risk vascularly. Now, as I say this as a non-surgeon, you're at risk vascularly when you do a re-elevation.
Yeah.
If you re-elevate the area. But when it comes to the filler, in some ways you have more vascular supply because you've raised up that tissue and now put it back down. And I'm saying central. It really,
you're just doing the nasal bridge.
Primarily, I do stay off the lateral because that's dumb to me. That's where you're going to end up in a problem. Now, I'll come all the way down at the tip and put a small depot at the tip, right? Okay. But I do not mess with the lateral bridge. To me, when you start getting into issues, it's because of where are your major vessels. So again, if I stay central, I'm on bone. Once you come off the bone, you're in the cartilage area to that area. And I just think lay small little spots.
Do you ever use a cannula through there?
No, I don't.
I've done it a couple times.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at it.
No, I think if you're comfortable doing it, I've just done it's a little hard to move from the needle when it's been working.
Yeah.
That's for fair. Me. Totally. But I stay off of the lateral area. I can't see how that's a good idea. Because I think that you could run into problems, period. I think you run into problems with the nose at all. I do not use large amounts on a nose.
No.
If I start really wanting to play around, you're going to come back. Yep. So that I'm never using a huge bolus in one area. And as you know, they look so good when you do it right. And then a little Botox sometimes if they're getting some flaring with their smile.
Yeah.
Laterally. What about tear troughs?
Ooh,
I love talking tear troughs.
I love talking about tear troughs. So for patients, do you care if I do a little bit of education?
Do it, girl. Take it.
So for patients, you've got some options. So you can do filler, or you can do blood products, exosomes, platelet-derived growth factor, all of that stuff. My favorite thing to do is I like to blend hyaluronic acid with a blood product.
Okay.
Now we have Easy Gel in our practice. I don't do a lot of it because I think from a provider perspective, it's a pain in the butt. You gotta heat it, you gotta cool it, you gotta heat it, you gotta cool it. Do you guys have Radiesse in your practice? So we have platelet-derived growth factor, which is basically, so the problem with PRP is not everybody's PRP is created equal. right?
Yes, agree.
Like if I'm a healthy 30-something-year-old versus a 70-year-old, our PRPs are not going to be alike.
Radiesse, is that what Trey's selling?
Yes.
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 There you go, Trey. We just
Boom.
Trey Yearwood, you just got it.
In the white and pink box.
Once again. So he hasn't come my way. I actually recently saw he and his wife at the airport come back from Tahoe.
Okay.
And at baggage claim, he started telling me about it. And so I was like,
I'm happy with. So basically what they've done is they've taken the idea behind PRP, but made it in a lab to where it's tested.
Easier,
Yeah.
right? And more consistent?
Yes.
Okay, makes sense to me.
Now, I'm not going to make claims because I haven't seen clinical data. You know me. I'm very science-based.
I'm science-based. To start.
But I also like anecdotally what do my patients tell me work.
Yeah.
And I'm really liking blending Bellatero or Redensity with like a little bit of platelet-derived growth factor, and that's like a 10 out of 10.
And you're using that with a cannula?
Yes.
So,
and I'm deep, like I'm scraping periosteum.
Okay, so I think that's hard to do and keep a patient comfortable. And to make sure you're deep. But yeah, so you're getting that, you're making them comfortable. You're down.
Yeah, so I come lateral canthal straight down, and then I.
Yes.
Fan.
So I take a needle. I know. And that's when my career ended.
So do you do like depots? Do you do?
Yes. So I'm gonna.
This is straight up.
Though. It works so well.
Listen,
so prior,
if it works. Who cares?
Oh, and this has been on there. I'm so documented now at this point. Might as well just give it up because. Okay, so I'm not gonna give it up. It looks beautiful. So I take BD needles, backfill.
Yeah.
BD needle, back to those. The downside with that, as you know, is it causes bruising. So you've got, and everybody's different, but usually you've got these little bruises that just kind of sit. It's like, but I'll take one. If you inject in, I usually can make about 3 depots with that one injection.
That's fair. Yeah.
But it's on bone. Now, I do want to go back to saying my background. I have an incredible boss, Dr. Walton, who is awesome in education, even during surgery. We did years of trauma in addition to having a full practice with cosmetics. Yeah. So it's a whole lot of tear trough or orbital floor fractures. Yeah, we are in it.
You're here. You know,
yes. Yeah. Seen it. You see enough anatomy that's normal. You see enough anatomy that's not, and you know where to be concerned or scared. And he's so just great about us talking and looking and all that stuff. So I'm in a lucky situation that way. The downside for me is the bruising. The positive side is if I do it this way, which is what I did prior to us having Allergan bringing in the Lovely Swift and all that stuff, and all of us starting to do cannula in that area. Prior to that, I'd never had an issue ever in that area.
And
never.
Now you're having issues.
I don't now. No, I have for this. Yes, and what I'd say is I only had a tiny bit. They weren't even big issues. They showed up a month to 2 months later because the muscle would grab a hold of it. I had 3
recruited
of my own. But you still have it from other people. Yeah, it recruits it forward. Now you got a bulge sitting underneath there. So I've been fortunate that I haven't really had a lot of that. A bit, but I did a lot on bone. And then they came in and started teaching cannula with this idea that it was going to be safer. And it looked great when I did it. And then you kind of see something happen later. Now, if you dilute something enough, you don't have enough HA there, you might not be in the space that you thought you were in. You just don't have enough of a bulge to come all the way up. And the skin might not even look okay.
And that's why I'm not dropping. I'm like very much so moving away from just using HAs in the troughs. Like so I'm not doing a trough if they're not open to blood products blended with.
I think you've hit something smart. So what I had, and even Trey had said, and some other folks are like, yeah, well, because we don't want to use HA in the area, we're only going to use like other stuff because you know how filler is. And I'm like, no, if I do filler the way that I know to do it and it does fine. Well, I walk it all the way around the orbit so you get that lateral area.
You stamp. I mean, that's what we've done for years. And I also think there's And I also think there's something about, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, my Tennessee is showing, but, like, if it ain't
Yes,
broke, don't fix it. You know what I
it
mean?
was working well. The downside, as we go back to, is the bruising.
Bruising. Yeah.
And bruising does suck in that area because you look like you got beaten. Some people.
You look like someone popped you in the face.
Yeah, and you don't know how much somebody's going to bruise. But
Yeah.
your idea makes sense. I just haven't used the Radiesse yet.
Yeah.
And we'll see when I get there. I also, again, because something else is working so well, it's hard for me to change.
And I'm not going to make the claim that I won't change my mind in 6 months. You know, I mean, I think, and I'm sure you feel this way. Most of the time when somebody wants tear troughs, they need a bleph.
Right. Well, sometimes I feel like it's really the upper part of the cheek and the bottom part of the tear trough as well.
That nasojugal.
Yes.
Break.
Sometimes it's also that the event is going to be, let's say, you know, I don't know how you feel, but somebody comes in and in 2 months their daughter's getting married. Well, we don't have time to do.
We don't have time for PRF or PRP or a bleph.
Yes, and even the bleph, we're not, you know, on our schedule. It depends, but you're not going to be able to put that in and then get them to heal.
No.
Before that, so that's where it helps. Some of my younger folks, it's really more like the ligament junction, and so it's just a little deeper, and it just helps it look like more reflective.
Yeah,
as you know, it's just kind of hard to tell. Sometimes it's also a little bit of blending in, kind of where they're a little puffy laterally, and again, they still would benefit from a lower left bleph, but we're not there yet. We're just.
What do you usually pull for troughs?
So, Resty L. Normal.
Okay. Love.
Is probably the primary with a little voluma underneath there.
Okay.
Voluma, the only thing I think is if somebody gets sick enough and they seem to be a little bit at risk for it, is maybe you could get a little laden. But I actually think voluma does really well. Strangely enough, I'd use some lift there for a while. And I think when I say lift, sometimes folks go lift, but I had gone down to a training years ago and they were using a little lift there. And why I think it works is because it's not hydrophilic. Yeah. And so to me, I know when RHA came out, they were saying to use RHA2 there. And when you tell me something on a tear trough, I'm going to sit and wait.
I'm watching.
I'm watching. So Radiesse was not out yet. Radiesse was not out. And of course I look at, I'm just I must be difficult to deal with as reps. But when it first came out, I was looking at a rep and I was going, it's a bad idea if you tell me to use something in an area and it's not a good idea. At that time, they didn't have Radiesse. So then when Radiesse comes out,
they had to check a box.
Yeah, Radiesse comes out and all of a sudden he goes, don't use RHA2, you need to use Radiesse. And I said,
wait,
why do you know that? Yeah, so I didn't use the RHA2, but I think I don't, so many things can be a little hydrophilic. And if it pulls any water in that area, it can be so thin, it just shows itself.
Yeah.
But I use, again, Resty L. That's what I tend to use right there in that area the most.
And it's beautiful.
And it works well. It's almost always supported on the upper part of the cheek, not with big cheeks. I have big cheeks because God gave them to me. But on folks that don't have that, it's not wanting to create a big cheek, but needing that support on the upper part of the cheek, usually to me. And then walking it, if they're a little hollow laterally to make it look more natural, is just walking that along. Everybody's a little different. Some people
play with contour.
Yeah.
Cannula wise, really pretty.
How long after this episode comes out do you think I'll get a text from that rep?
Is John
a little no,
or is it
Mary. Okay, so I want us to address a product line that some may not know about, but it's RHA Revance, which I think in Europe is called Teoxane.
Yes,
is their company, but here at Revance, and so they carry Tox, which is Daxify, and then they carry the RHA line, which includes Redensity, RHA 2, 3, and 4. Yeah. So tell me your experience. Do you like it? Not like it? What are you using out of that line right now, primarily?
Yeah. So we carry it. I love Redensity. I think Redensity is beautiful for like a tear trough. I don't do a lot of tear troughs with just HA, but I love to blend Redensity with blood product. I also think Redensity is beautiful for perioral lines or like smoker's lines.
Yeah.
I think RHA2 is beautiful in a lip. It's really pretty. And like if I have somebody that maybe doesn't want any swelling, I think RHA2 doesn't swell very much. Love those two products. I think RHA3 and RHA4 are kind of very similar to other product portfolios.
Are you using them?
We are.
Okay. So, Fitzpatrick. So we always need to think, especially with skin, on Fitzpatrick scales. And that really, to me, it's really when I'm referring somebody over to whether it's lasers, peels, things like that. I like to just warn everybody in the public is that if you have darker skin tone at all, really, if you're anything to me over a 2, to be quite honest, which is really
I mean,
pale,
if you're darker than us,
yes, then you really need to make sure you're with an experienced injector. Don't go to peel parties or anything like that. You just, and not the party, but you got to find an experienced, I say injector, experienced skincare professional. Yes, to make sure that they're adequately protecting your skin so that we don't end up with hypo or hyperpigmentation or that you've been told those things. I love talking to you always. Like, period. I've texted you multiple times. One is, and just as I'm concluding, is I trust your thoughts, and I am a skeptic, as any of the people know around me. I don't let people put syringes in my face. I do it. And I don't like, I probably have trust issues a little bit, but it's because I want authentic, real answers, even if the answer is, I don't know. Or it's that we said one thing and then we decide, you know what, I thought that way, but now I don't. And I think that takes a level of confidence that your patients can have in you and say, you know what, I feel comfortable doing this. This is what we should do. Your experience is the ability to evaluate a person, figure out what their desires and goals are, and then what is best for them, and then how to carry out that plan. And I've just, everything that you've always said is just, and to your credit is, I feel like you have experience beyond your years here. Just covering when you first came as a trainer to my office, I was like, okay, here we go.
I know.
She's young. And you also have a young face. Like I always laugh and say I got carded until I was over 30. I mean, I was in my mid 30s before, folks. But the thing was, you started speaking and I went, she knows. And she's also confident enough to tell me what we're not sure about, which is really the same thing that we're all feeling. So for your sake of your patients, they're in great hands, I know, when they see you. And when we don't know, we also know when to say, hey, this is who I think you should go to for skin. This is who I think you should go to for a surgeon, or this is what I can do for you, but this is your limitation. And I tell patients all the time, no matter what state you live in, no matter where you go to, is you've got to find the providers that you trust, their advice, because the internet is an awesome place and resource, but it doesn't know everything and it doesn't have experience on its side. So I know they can feel safe with you, and I appreciate you showing up today.
Oh my gosh, I appreciate your time so much. Like, I think when you find people that organically it works, it feels good, but you're still practicing medicine.
Yes,
I think medicine. That's my biggest thing is like, and in traditional medicine, you collaborate all the time.
Totally.
Right?
You ask each other questions. What have you seen? What is your experience? But there's a confidence there with certain people to share the truth.
Yeah.
And I very, and some of that is maybe my ability to trust or not trust. That's my own problem.
That just means you got a good vibe. Listen, you either get a good vibe or you don't.
You do or you don't. Either God gave it to you and you need to listen, or, you're off there. But
literally.
Yes. So thank you for showing up. And so how can they contact you? So where can they find you on social media?
Yeah. So if you want to check me out, I'm Caroline Barnes RN on Instagram, on TikTok.
Caroline with a C, by the way. Yeah.
Yes. Caroline with a C, just Caroline Barnes RN. Instagram is where I do most of my stuff. And for providers out there, if you ever have questions about how to train with me, you can email me at caroline@carolinebbarnes.com.
Awesome. And then you're currently at Artisan Beauty.
Artisan Beauty in Atlanta,
Yeah.
Georgia.
Good. And they can find that through social media, which is awesome
Yeah.
too. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Mwah, mwah, mwah.